Just the other day, I accomplished the unthinkable. I achieved a 5th place time on the Five Nights at Freddy's speedrun leaderboard. I was now among the greatest FNAF players in the world. It's not easy being on top, but somebody has to do it. I wanted to be the very best, like no one ever was. But Theft King, how can you speedrun FNAF? The whole game is based around waiting for each night to end, and there aren't any ways to make it go faster. This is true. If you play the game normally and you don't die, you'll finish the game at the exact same time every time. There was one trick that allowed you to skip the newspaper scene when first starting a new game, but it was effortless and anyone could do it. After that, it was just a matter of not dying. Unlike subsequent FNAF games, there aren't any menus or minigames between the nights in FNAF 1. You just automatically roll into the next night and keep playing. There shouldn't be any way to save time. And there wasn't. At the start, the developer keys like CD+ were allowed in the speedrun. These allow you to skip levels, and it made the speedrun about 10 seconds long and really dumb. Eventually, these commands were banned and the leaderboard was reset. The only real tech in the game was skipping the newspaper at the beginning, and after that, you couldn't really save any time. For a while, something like 50 people were tied for FNAF 1's any % world record. It was a meme category. Beat FNAF without dying and get a world record. It was a joke. All of that would change on May 3rd, 2022. YouTuber and Twitch streamer Throwaway Account had recently seen EazySpeezy's video about FNAF World speedruns. Inspired, Throwaway began to work on a FNAF World tool-assisted speedrun. While working on the speedrun, Throwaway accidentally selected the incorrect file on FNAF World's title screen. Realizing his mistake, he hit Alt F4 in an attempt to close the game while the screen was fading out. To his surprise, the game didn't close. Instead, the fade-out transition was completely skipped. Stunned, Throwaway Account tried to reproduce this behavior and found that it was consistent. At any other moment, pressing Alt F4 would simply close the game, but during these fade to black sequences, it would instead immediately skip to the frame after the transition. This was a big discovery. Throwaway Account relayed the information about the skip to the other FNAF speedrunners, but unfortunately, none of them believed him. Fooling unsuspecting people into pressing Alt F4 and closing whatever software they have open is an age-old trick, and the rest of the speedrunners assumed that Throwaway Account was just trolling them. No one even thought to try it, and the discovery wouldn't be taken seriously until a few days later, when Throwaway suggested that they implement the fade skip into their FNAF World speedrun. Throwaway realized that this trick worked in all ClickTeam games that used the built-in fade to black functionality, and that included the early FNAF games. The trick was dubbed the fade skip, and on May 17th, Throwaway submitted the first new world record time to FNAF's speedrun leaderboard in over 2 years. Naturally, the moderators were shocked. It's not every day that a world record run is submitted, let alone one that claims to have displaced the near 50 records that had previously been tied for first. They reached out to Throwaway Account on Discord, who explained the intricacies of the skip, and the run was verified shortly after. For the first time in 2 years, there was a new world record in FNAF. With FNAF speedrunning competitive again, I set my sights at the top. I wanted to become a top FNAF player. I wanted to become the greatest, or at least among the greatest. I fired up my stream and launched FNAF 1 for the first time in a while. The first trick is to do the newspaper skip. By clicking continue and then hovering our cursor over the new game option, the game will start us off on night 1, but skip the newspaper sequence that normally precedes it. This takes us to the 12 AM first night screen immediately, and we prepare for our first fade skip. Executing the skip is as simple as waiting for the screen to start fading out and then pressing Alt F4. Night 1 is always simple. The animatronics often never make it to your office, and if they do, it's pretty easy to close the door on them. I like this. It makes it so that the first time you play, you really have time to explore the interface and look at the setting in the pizzeria. Spending a night staring at the creepy animatronics as they slowly move throughout the pizzeria is quite unnerving, and it does a great job of building up tension for future nights. Unfortunately, at the end of night 2, I accidentally let Bonnie into the office, and while I tried to hold on and just not use my cameras for the rest of the night, Foxy ended up killing me. It was just a warm-up. On night 2 of my second attempt, something very, very strange happened at 4 AM. In FNAF, Foxy has 3 phases. He hides behind the curtain, he starts poking out through the curtain, and then he's like totally out of the curtain. Every few seconds, Foxy has a 5% chance of moving. If he's in phase 0 or 1, he'll progress to the next phase. If he's in phase 2, he'll leave Pirate's Cove and attack you. However, Foxy's attempts to move will always fail if you have the cameras up when his turn comes around. It doesn't matter which camera you look at. As long as it's up, Foxy can't move. Scott put mechanics in place that make it difficult to time exactly when Foxy's turns come around, so the strategy is to just check the cameras about once every second. That usually prevents him from moving. It was only night 2, and I wasn't in try-hard mode yet. I knew I could let Foxy bang on my door and still have enough power to survive the night, so when I noticed that he had left Pirate Cove, I just shut the door and didn't think much of it. You can imagine my surprise when less than 15 seconds later, I pulled the camera up and saw Foxy running down the hall at me again. What? What the just happened? What the just happened? Foxy can't do that. He can't attack me twice in 10 seconds. Foxy's a cheater. He just cheated. There was only one logical explanation: Scott Cawthon. Scott was sabotaging me. He must have implanted secret netcode into FNAF, just biding his time, waiting for the day Theft King would do speedrun attempts. At that very moment, he activated his Trojan, causing the game to have highly unfavorable RNG and triggering the Foxy double strike. It turns out that after Foxy attacks you, he doesn't necessarily start back at phase 0, behind the curtains. He can start at phase 1 as well. I hadn't looked at the cameras for over 10 seconds, and the moment I did, Foxy was on me again. It's totally possible, but it's still pretty unlikely. At best, it's a 1 in 400 chance, and at worst, it's like 1 in 8,000. I wasn't going to give up yet though. Giving up is for losers, and I'm not a loser, I'm a winner. If I was a loser, would I be taking advantage of an obscure glitch to save a handful of seconds in a Five Nights at Freddy's speedrun for the sole purpose of breaking into the top 5 and being able to call myself one of the greatest Five Nights at Freddy's players in the world? Yeah, didn't think so. It means I'm the opposite of a loser. It means I'm the coolest person in the world, actually. Yeah. Scott's double Foxy attack left me in bad shape though. I had run out of power. Looking at the timer, I knew the night was almost over and that it would all come down to whether or not Freddy felt like singing tonight. I held my breath and I watched. For those unfamiliar, Freddy will sing for a random amount of time and he'll delay for a random amount of time afterwards before killing you. I knew Scott would probably try to stop me again, but I was just too pro, and I managed to salvage just enough power to get through the night before he could sick Freddy on me. Another 2 fade skips, and we were on to night 4. Now it was serious. On night 4, all of the enemies are active, and their AI is set to decent levels. This is the first night where the cam stall glitch really comes in handy. Freddy Fazbear's mechanic is different from the other animatronics. Freddy will make a beeline to your office, and he'll never backtrack away from you. However, unlike Bonnie or Chica, Freddy cannot move if you have the camera on him. Scott's intention was likely for the player to keep an eye on Freddy as much as possible, using all their downtime to prevent him from getting closer to the player. Once Freddy is in cam 4B right outside your hallway, you're screwed. If his turn comes around while your camera is down and he rolls a high enough number, which is dependent on his AI setting, he gets into your office and it's probably GG. He never leaves. Fortunately, Scott made a serious mistake when coding Freddy's AI. If you have cam 4B selected, Freddy can never enter your office, even if the cameras are down. When he goes to try and move, the game just registers you as looking at him even when you aren't, and he's never able to get in. Utilizing this trick, we can trap Freddy in the hallway right outside the office. We can use the lights to check for Bonnie and Chica, and we can flip up the camera every second or so in order to keep Foxy from moving. Check the door, flip the camera. Check the door, flip the camera. As long as you do this well enough and close the doors when the enemies are there, you basically can't lose. Unfortunately, Scott had other plans for me. Surely infuriated that I had prevailed in spite of his best attempts to stop me, he activated the next phase of his sabotage, Chica. Around 2 AM on night 4, Chica showed up at my door. I closed it and continued playing. Then Bonnie showed up, and Chica stayed at my door for over a minute, with Bonnie there for a good chunk of it too. I was just dead. There was literally no way to survive this. If I opened the doors, they'd kill me, but by leaving them closed, I drained all my power, and by the time they finally left, there just wasn't enough. It was a true death by RNG. Scott had sabotaged me. I wasn't going to give up without a fight though. I'm tough. After crying for only a couple of minutes, I wiped away my tears and I continued. Night 1, easy. Night 2, no problem. Night 3, cruising along. Could this be the run? I nailed the fade skips, all of them, better than I ever have before. This was it, this was my chance. Scott clearly didn't expect me to have such determination. Even his attempts at remote sabotage were futile before my mighty resolve. I had fallen into a rhythm and I had transcended the levels of mortal FNAF. I was like Neo in the Matrix. I could see the game's code through the pixels on the screen. I could feel the figurative dice rolling as each animatronic's turn came around. I had become one with Five Nights at Freddy's. I was unstoppable. That top 5 time was as good as mine. Then I died to Bonnie. Scott got his revenge when I least expected it. He hadn't been slacking off. He was merely lulling me into a false sense of security, only to take it all away on the very cusp of my glorious victory. I took a deep breath and calmed myself. This would be it. The next attempt would be the run. I executed a perfect newspaper skip, one so impressive that Throwaway Account himself would later call it one of the most skillful newspaper skips in FNAF history and perhaps the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. It will likely go down as one of the greatest moments not just in gaming, but in all of human history. I breezed through nights 1 through 3 again, nailing all the fade skips again. Night 4 was tricky, and the RNG wasn't so great. Scott's manipulation was still in full effect. Bonnie and Chica camped my doors, and I was forced to leave them closed for longer than I'd have preferred. However, I managed to eke out a victory with only 1% power remaining. This was it, night 5, the final night in the any percent speedrun. The night that separates the spring traps from the plush traps. It all came down to this. The night started off well. Chica and Bonnie didn't bother me too much, keeping my power usage down. My camera flips were on point, preventing Foxy from moving. Thanks to my pro-level cam stalling skills, Freddy was stuck in the corner, sitting in timeout as usual. I had this. Just a few more minutes and I would become one of the greatest FNAF players in the world. It was now 5 a.m. I was only a minute or two away from victory, but my power was low, under 10%. It looked like I'd be able to make it when Scott hit me with his desperation move, a well-placed Chica at the worst possible time. If Chica were to stick around for too long, it would drain my power, and bad luck with Freddy's song could lead to my death. 45 minutes of flawless, professional Five Nights at Freddy's gameplay ruined. No, I wasn't going to let Scott do that. I willed Chica to leave the door, and sure enough, she did. Scott wasn't going to take that lying down, though. A few moments later, Chica returned to the door. This time it was different, though. This time it was personal. Chica didn't just want to stuff me into an animatronic suit. She wanted vengeance, fueled by the unquenchable fury of Scott Cawthon himself. I closed the door, ready for a final standoff with Freddy Fazbear. Chica may drain my power, but I still had a chance. If I could maintain my composure before Freddy, 6 a.m. might just roll around in time. I prepared for the blackout when suddenly... I had done it, against all odds, and even with Scott Cawthon himself attempting to sabotage me from the shadows, I had won. I had finished Five Nights at Freddy's faster than almost anyone in the world. I submitted my time to speedrun.com and it was approved. I was now a top 5 FNAF player, one of the greatest FNAF players in the world. It was a long, difficult journey that took me almost 2 hours. There were moments where I wanted to give up, moments where I thought to myself, is this even worth it? Thankfully, you guys were there to cheer me on and to motivate me. I couldn't have done this without you, and this glorious victory, this unfathomable achievement, is just as much yours as it is mine. Only my name goes on the leaderboard though, sorry. Unfortunately, being among the best Five Nights at Freddy's players in the world isn't all it's cracked up to be. I'll tell you from first-hand experience, it ain't easy being at the top. I've achieved so much in the world of FNAF speedrunning, and all whilst the creator himself was doing everything in his power to stop me. I just feel like it's time to move on and hand it off to the next generation of runners. Thus, I'm announcing my retirement from FNAF 1 speedruns. I'm going out on top. However, my time is certainly beatable. So are the times ahead of me too. You need to be willing to put in the 2 hours, but if you are, you too can become one of the world's top FNAF players like me. I hope to see a lot of new FNAF runs submitted, and I hope you guys are able to beat my time. I hope the next generation of FNAF runners are able to knock me all the way out of the top 100. It was a long 2 hours grinding for that record, but once you finally get it, it's really satisfying. I think I finally understand why speedrunners like to grind games for so long now. Thanks so much for watching.